Welcome to Eventful Endeavors, secrets to crafting the perfect celebration. If you're planning an event and looking for useful tips from industry experts, you're in the right place. So get ready to take some notes and we'll dive right in. This is Eventful Endeavors.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Eventful Endeavors. Today we are chatting with another wedding planner. We are here with Courtney Haynes of One Sweet Day Events, who's based out in Ventura, California. And first of all, thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we always like to kind of start out the same way, which is asking how you kind of got into this industry, where you started, what made you get into wedding planning, how it all started. So tell us your story.
Yeah, so funny enough, I just always wanted to be a wedding planner since I was a kid. I don't know why, something about it was so fascinating to me. And my mom and I had this grand idea that we were going to have like a B&B, like a bed and breakfast, and we were going to have rehearsal dinner on Friday, host the wedding on Saturday and day after brunch on Sunday, and be these amazing planners of this beautiful cottage. And that was our plan. Fairy tale, of course, because, growing up, there's not like a school you can learn to buy a B&B and host weddings. So I deviated towards architecture, which was something I was also really passionate about, but there was a school you could go for architecture. So
Sure.
I got into school. I was like, this is great. I like this. I'm going to go with this. And I got hired as a construction project manager. So I could really like get my hands and feet wet in the design aspect. And project management was everything for me. I fell right into that role. I was very good at it. Something about handling the multi-projects, the emotions of the clients, the budget constraints, reading, writing contracts, hiring vendors. It was a great job. I loved it. Then fast forward to a few years into that job, and my best friend was getting married, and she said, "Hey, I know you always want to be a wedding planner. Plan my wedding. I'm going to be super difficult, and I'm not going to pay you." And I'm like, "I'm in."
Not going to pay you.
So I started planning this wedding, and what do you know? It's the exact same job I'm already doing in my world of construction. And I fell into it so easily. And I'm like, but I love this job and I'm happy here. And when I walked onto a construction site, every single day I had to prove myself that I knew what I was doing because I was young and I was a female. You come into this world of wedding planning and they're like, "Oh, you already know everything." I mean, maybe not, but it was this whole different vibe that you got. So I did this wedding, loved it, learned a lot. Like, okay, so they're vendors, not subcontractors. Okay. The timeline is only a day, not a 3-year timeline. There's some things like that that I quickly learned. And so I finished that wedding. And then the next couple of years, I did some of her bridesmaids' weddings and I did some of our friends and friend after friend after friend. Eventually I started charging for it. And then that was like my big break. Like, okay, I'm making money off this. Okay, cool. And my boss in construction at the time was very supportive of that role. He was like, "I want you. You want to do this job. You don't want to be in construction forever. And I see that. And I've helped mold your project management skills and I want to see you flourish." So he let me leave early when I had meetings. He would let me skip work on Fridays when I had rehearsal. I didn't work
Well,
weekends.
that's cool.
Really, he helped me, get into this career. And then eventually it was enough that it was like, okay, like I can decide that I'm going to try to do this. So I stopped working for him and I started working for another contractor that I could just do some consulting on the side. So I could do my job and consulting. And that took off for a few years. And then finally I was like, wipe my hands with construction. I'm full wedding planning and I've never looked back. It is just a high that I can never come down from. And I love every minute of it.
I like that. So when exactly did One Sweet Day, when was that born?
So the name was born in 2010, but the
Okay.
first wedding I did was 2006. So, so I guess that's 14 years this year. That's
Sure.
an easy number. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, I've heard, a lot of similar stories for like wedding planners, like their first experience getting into it is like planning a friend's wedding. But then I always ask them like advice they give couples and they say, don't hire your friends.
Yes.
So I just think it's interesting that that's such a juxtaposition. Like everybody gets started that way, but they're also like, don't do it. Like I'm not condoning it.
It's so true. And years ago, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen me, but I always wear a name tag on wedding day. And I started
Okay.
doing that from the very beginning because people would come up to me and say, "You are such a good friend setting up all these, place cards." And I was like, "Oh no, ma'am, this is my business," and they're like, "Oh." So I started wearing a name tag just so that you could show the representation that you are a professional in this job.
Right.
So, the thing that I say about me though is like I'm one of a kind. Like I planned parties and gatherings and social events my entire life. I'm the house that everybody comes to for gatherings. I host the holidays. I host every single party that there is. We make up parties just to have parties. So I'm that
Sure.
person that has always been in that role. So when I say I was the friend doing the wedding, I maybe was a step up, and I also had some classical training underneath my belt. But
Right.
it's true. That is good advice. Like read your reviews, make sure that you're hiring reputable people that have been in the industry, know the ins and outs. And the things that I didn't have back then was my support team. I didn't have those backup, photographers to call if something
Right.
happened to my photographer the day of. I didn't have that plethora of DJs that I could be like, "Hey, he's losing his voice and I need someone else to MC. Like, can we mash you up?" Things like that. I didn't have that back then. And I
Right.
look at it now and I think, I don't know how I did it. That sounds like so
Yeah.
scary to me. I have such a great community now that I can really reach out to. Not that I have to, but it's that comfort.
Yeah, and we'll get into that community in a little bit because I do want to talk to that about that. But first, um, speaking of advice, like obviously we said, like do your research, do this. But what would be your like another like number one piece of advice for newlyweds? Like just got engaged. This is what I would recommend. Step one, do this, or don't do this, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like having a venue and having a date are very important. I feel like so
Sure.
many people come to me and they're looking for coordination, but they don't know anything about what they want because they haven't done their research on the venues. And I do packages where I help them find venues, but I feel like more organically, the client can find the venue on their own, do some research or ask for some referrals, do that legwork, find something that suits you, book the venue, have the date. That way, when you're reaching out to people, you can confidently say, "This is the date I'm getting married," so that person can check their calendar to make sure, okay, I'm in fact available.
Mm,
Fall in love with somebody like Sean, I don't want to call you and fall in love with you and then pick a date and you're
yeah.
like, "We're not available," but you can have an
Hmm.
associate. Great. Yes, of course. I would still love that. But if you want I'm a small business. So it's like what you see is what you get. And so if that date is
Right.
already booked, I'm not available. So I definitely think finding the venue is a good first step, picking that date. And then I can't preach enough about just doing your homework on vendors. Pick vendors that have worked at the venue, pick vendors that have been around a long time, pick vendors that
Right.
have great reviews, pick vendors that you jam with. Get on the phone with me, get on a Zoom with me and make sure that my energy doesn't freak you out. you know?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Make sure that you're like, "Yeah, I vibe with you, you vibe with me,
Yeah.
let's make this happen." I have people that do just hire me because of my reputation, which I am appreciative of, but
Right.
then, maybe we meet and we're like, "Oh, we're kind of like you're really shy and I'm like really like energetic," and I don't know, we
Right.
jam, we've worked it out, but I would like to have that connection with my couples in advance.
Yeah, I mean, these people, all your vendors are they're going to be there your whole day of the big day, and they're going to be talking to you. Like you're going to have to communicate with them, all of them in some
Oh,
capacity,
yes.
so it's good to have at least a couple conversations ahead of time. So,
Well, too, and the photographer is another thing that I like. Once you book your photographer, you're looking at photographers. I highly recommend doing an engagement session with them because I'm
right.
like, this is the person that is in front of you all day long. And yes, I'm definitely in front of you all day long, but the photographer is really like that's intimate, and you want to feel comfortable behind their lens. You want to make sure that the way that they capture you is the way that you're comfortable being captured. When I got married, I've been married almost 13 years now, and I hired a photographer that I had worked with one wedding, thought she was lovely, didn't really have a huge group at the time, hired her. And let's just say I was not happy. And I
Oh,
ended in all of my wedding photos again on my little Nikon camera with my two best girlfriends. We got dressed up again, hair and makeup, made a bouquet, and went out and took photos on my Nikon because I hated the photos. In the nicest way, it just she was a good photographer, but I didn't like how she captured me. And for example, I wore a strapless dress. And a lot of the photos I look like I had no clothes on. I was like, who would have known? But then you go back and look at her work
right.
and you're oh, that's how her work is. Okay. So that's another thing. I'm like, even if you're thinking like, oh, we're going to save some money and we're going to pull the engagement session out, I'm like, no, please go and sit with them and be comfortable.
Yeah.
100%.
I did an engagement session and we just had a
Good.
great time with our photographer. And I was like, okay, this is the right move. Like, this is great. And
Did
we
you
ended up,
use some of those photos too on your wedding day?
we have them, they're sitting in my house right now. A lot of the photos from the engagement studio, I've got them in frames over there. We had some great photos come out. So we were
Great.
very, very happy with that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a good point. I mean, you gotta know what you're getting into because it's important. So that being said, also like, you usually come in, like people usually get you after they've got their venue and their date. So do you usually get a lot of like people? Do you have a lot of brides that already have photography booked, or do you mostly recommend like, oh, these are the people that I think you're going to vibe with to them? Like, where do
I
you come in
Yeah,
like most of the time in the process?
most of the time I actually come in between the 6 month and the 1 month kind of
Okay,
span. And they might hire me a year out, but they might only bring me on for the month of, which is
sure,
fine. It's a good package. It's a very fast paced package for people that have really gotten everything together. I can come in at the end and I'm kind of a closer. So I send recommendations, whether people hire me or not, I send out
right,
recommendations. So even if they send an inquiry on this date and like, we have nobody hired, I had a girl recently, like, I'm having such a hard time finding a videographer. I sent her a quote for me, but I was like, here's some amazing videographers that I worked with. They're all tried and true. And the videographer, one of them, texted me, he's like, hey, thanks for the referral. Are you doing that wedding? I'm like, I'm not booked for that wedding, but I sent her your recommendation.
right,
He was like, that's so nice of you. Like, thank you. And I said, because maybe I'm not the right fit, but one of my people are. So I feel like I would like to share those reputable, resources to people, even if I'm not the right fit. And I think that also sets me apart a little bit because I have some wedding planners
yep,
that might listen to this and cringe and be like, oh my God, you do what? But I just feel like I have a great network I want to share. And that circled back around. I want to say that particular client did circle back and ended up hiring me. She's like, loved your people, loved
right.
you, I'm going to call. And, it's all one big happy family.
Yeah, and I love that, and I do a similar thing. I was going to save this for a little bit later, but I think it's a good time to jump into it. Is even me, like doing dueling pianos, like our biggest competition is like live bands and DJs because we're the music of the day. But even me, like if they're not in, I have DJ friends. I'm like, well, if you want to go the DJ route, this is who you should talk to. Like, I'm still down to help the couples, and I'm still down to even throw that to somebody because I still want things to be good. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize about the wedding industry that don't work in it is, it is, for the most part, there are exceptions. For the most part, it's a lot of people kind of building each other up, like as opposed to tearing it down. And I
Yeah.
know, you're heavily involved in NACE, which for those that don't know is the National Association of Catering and Events, which is designed essentially around that concept. So talk a little bit about that, how you got into it, what your guys' mission is essentially, because we haven't talked about it yet on this podcast.
I'm so impressed by you because the symbol NACE, a lot of people don't know what it stands for. And so I started saying in my welcome speech, like, NACE, it's the National Association for Catering and Events, because
Yeah.
people don't know what it is. But essentially, I'm part of the Ventura chapter. There's over 40 chapters across the country. And the mission is really to bring education and networking to local vendors. And so I really got into NACE in the beginning because I wanted to expand my resources and meet the people that I maybe wouldn't otherwise get to meet on a monthly, yearly, daily basis. And so I started coming to these meetings and I'd be like, oh, I've heard of that photographer. And then I would like go and talk to
Mm-hmm.
them, put face to phone. And so then they saw something in me. They're like, oh, like you like know a lot of people and you have great energy. And like, do you want to plan a meeting? And so I planned a meeting and then they're like, great, you're now on the board of directors. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, but I've stuck with it. And honestly, it has helped me grow in my business, not because of the referrals, because I feel like I didn't join Nate's for the referrals, but I got into it for the sense of community. And something that we really were working on last year is community over competition. Like, it doesn't matter that there are 10 planners here. We're all friends, we all network, and if I'm not available for a date, I send people to these planners.
Sure.
And so we're also working on giving back to the community. Last year we did a couple of great community service efforts where we did like a back to school drive. We did a canned food drive, and that warms my heart too, that we can be doing something with the voice that we have to not only do education and networking for our local community, but also to give back to that community. So I love it. I got back from conference. We went to an amazing conference in Virginia and met people from all over the world that do NACE, and it was so exciting
Yeah.
to like meet other people, like this girl from Chicago, and I met people from Seattle, and I was like, wow, it's not just our group, but our group only
Yeah.
spans so far, but it's nationwide.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, you know, I've had people when I've recommended other people, they're like, "Oh, do you like make money off of that or something?" And I'm like, "No, no, I really don't. I'm just like, this is what it is. Like, I know these people. Like, if you're gonna do an event, like, I'd rather you do it right. You know,
Yeah,
like, I'm not. I'm just. It takes 2 seconds to send an email. If you're not booking me, whatever. You know,
it's so true.
but
So
here you
true.
go. Like, you know, and then it is kind of that, like, because then people help you out. It becomes it's a network, it's a community, and it's valuable. And I think it's if you are a bride or groom and somebody does do that, I think that is a like, take the recommendation, because they're not just doing it to do it. They're not, you know, I really think people should reach out to those people.
Like, I don't get any type of kickback either, nor do I want it.
Yeah.
Like, I want people that are tried and true in the circle and to build up our community. And I'm thinking too, isn't that how we met? Is through NACE?
Yes. We
Okay,
met through NACE. Yeah.
full circle. Getting to meet
Yeah.
people that we wouldn't otherwise have met, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe one day down the line we would have worked together, but
Sure.
yeah, fast forward to that. Love it.
I've met a ton of people from NACE, and I've worked with several of them now, and I've referred some of them, and vice versa. So it's been, you know, just for me, it's been a great kind of thing, you know. So I love that. Yeah, and yet, like I said, planning a wedding is difficult, but, you know, if you find vendors that are just willing to help you out, like, especially at the beginning on that first phone call, you know, I ask people to this day. I mean, they're booking music when they talk to me, but I'm like, I always end my phone calls. Is there anything else you're looking for? You know, I
Yeah.
always ask people, like, what else are you still looking for? Something, like, I know a lot of people, like, you know, I know where you're getting married. Like, what are you looking for? I can shoot you some contacts that I think you'd get along with. You know, I always try to end all my conversations that way. You know,
I
just
think
to help.
that it builds up our community, and two, like, again,
Yeah.
we know that the people that are going to show up are going to do a great job, and that's also a
Right.
reflection on us, so it's all one big happy circle.
Yeah. And if you do book me, I want the people I know there, because then it's more fun for me.
More fun, yes.
It's way more fun when I find out I'm doing a wedding and I'm like, wait, you're on that wedding? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, great. This is going to be awesome. I'll see you next week. You know, because when your vendors are getting along, it's also an easier day for you. So I think it's fun when all the vendors kind of know each other and you have those teams that have worked together many times. So it's good. Anyway, so let's get back onto wedding stuff. Let's go back to wedding stuff. So talk to me about, because you've been doing weddings for a while. You said your first one in 2016. So over the
2006.
course, 2006, which is, I don't even want to say it.
I think it's like
Oh man,
8.
that's almost 2 decades ago. So
Oh yeah.
that's crazy to me. But in that time frame, obviously a lot of things have changed. You know, we've now got TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff where people can pull all these ideas from Pinterest. So over the course of those many years, like, what have you seen change in, like, terms of wedding trends, like things that maybe used to happen and now don't, or used to never happen and now everybody's doing? What are some of those things you've noticed?
Well, I go back to that very first wedding. I have pictures of the wedding cake. It's where it still had the stilts that came up in between each tier, and it
Yeah.
has a lot of like lace and frill. And I sometimes will have, you know, post that photo and be like, taking it back. Like, this is what your cake looked like 18 years ago. And you look at the cakes now that are just like super sleek and modern, or like just a very like watercolor. I mean, the cakes definitely have been one of those
Right.
things that have changed a lot. Definitely the fashion has changed a lot over that time as well, which I
Right.
think for the better. Trends that I feel like are happening now, one of the biggest trends we had last year and it's carrying into this year, is that audio guest book. People
The
like,
phone?
yes, the
Yeah,
phone.
the phone. The
You know,
phone.
you're part of that interactive experience on
Yeah.
wedding day, that people like that. And to have a
Yep.
phone that they pick up, for anyone that doesn't know, it's an old school rotary phone. You pick up the thing, the phone the receiver. Sure. See, we all have cell phones now. You pick that up and you leave a
Right.
message, and you're like, hey, Jenny and Bobby, like, thank you so much for having me at your wedding. Like, I've had the best day. Like, you're so great. Okay, love Courtney, bye. And you hang up. Well, the fun part about that is then that's pre-ceremony, and then there's cocktail hour, and then there's after cocktail. Hey, it's me again. I just want to say it's a great party. Okay, bye. And then
Yeah.
going, and then at the end of the night, it's like, oh my God, you hear the dueling pianos are so great. Like the messages, you can record several messages up to 10 hours. So hilarious that has been the evolution. And then you send it in, and then they basically send you a recording of all these messages. So that's a big trend that I couldn't even imagine that even like 5 years ago, because 5 years ago, we're all under the Polaroids. That was the guest. That was the big thing, that everybody did the Polaroid guest book, and my assistants would cringe because the amount of trash that comes out of that, like every 10 pictures, opening more film, and then people don't leave it, or they take 10 photos, or they walk away with the camera. So I think I'm happier with the audio guest book a little bit.
Yeah. I
and
love
then
it.
and then we've been seeing a lot more of like the live musicians at weddings too, whether it's somebody like you that's coming in and doing the dueling pianos, or where we're syncing up a saxophone player with a DJ or a trombone player with a DJ, and doing those live elements that I feel like have been becoming really popular. And I don't know if that's just because people are like, this is cool, or if it's something that they're seeing on TikTok. I'm not personally on TikTok because I worry about how much time I'm going to waste on TikTok.
Yeah. I don't do it.
But Instagram, I do Instagram, and I, post a few times a week, but there's definitely so much content out there that's great. I do try to hone my clients in a little bit on some of that stuff and explain to them the difference between Instagram and like a real wedding. And, part of our jobs is to educate our clients. So I had to do that a lot more recently with the evolution of Pinterest and whatnot.
Yeah. Because sometimes when you see something, it's like that Instagram versus reality thing that is going around. It's like, okay, well, what they're not showing you is this, like,
Exactly.
so
And the
that
cost involved in things like that. Sometimes I just have to break it down with cost alone, and they're like,
right.
oh, I had no idea. Okay, let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. But I mean, yeah, it's been interesting. It seems like everything's a lot more modern. I love the phone. The phone things are my favorite. I did not do one, and I regretted it. But
Oh,
my friend did one, and it was a blast. Like, I recorded like 4 messages, and he actually had a bunch of us. He had a bunch of us over like a week after their honeymoon or something. He's like, "Do you guys want to come have some cocktails and like listen to all these messages?" And I was like, "I don't even know what I said." So I do. And then it got to mine at like the end. Like, my 4th one was just real casual, and it was just me being like, "Hey, this is Sean. Give me a call back. I just wanted to see if you wanted to save a bunch of money on your car insurance by switching to Geico." I was like, "Why did I send that?"
but
But it
that's
was
so
so funny.
different. It's not the
Yeah.
same, like, thanks for having me, like
Yeah.
I always struggle because I feel like I should leave a message for my clients at some point. But there's a lot of stuff happening on wedding day. So
Right.
to like pull aside and be focused on like a message that conveys like my, appreciation for the couple or whatnot, I usually say something, short and sweet like that. So I'm not sure about, if you're
Sure.
saving money on car insurance, but it's funny.
I
And
don't
they'll
know.
remember that message over a lot of others.
It was, and that was not even like, there was a lot of goofy stuff. It was very funny, but I do love that. And I love that things are changing in that kind of fun direction. So people are all about the experience, just let's
All
make
about
it fun.
experience. And that also, with that, we're getting rid of bouquet toss. We're getting rid of garter
Yep.
toss. We're doing less and less cake cutting even.
Yeah.
We're kind of skipping through that so we can get to the dancing, we can get to the photo booth, we can get to those more interactive experiences.
Sure.
Which is, I personally like. I think that some of those traditions are fun in the right context, and some of them are just a bit dated. And when the
Right.
client asks me, like, is it okay to not do that? I'm like, there are no traditions these days. There is nothing that you have to do. You can do everything upside down, and everyone's going to be like, cool. No one's going to even question it. And that makes them
Right.
feel a little more comfortable. Like, okay, I'm like, let's think outside the box, because for me, I want to think out the box for them and for all of us to just do something different and creative.
Yeah. And speaking of which, this is a perfect transition. What would you say is the most unique thing you've ever seen at a wedding? Like something that was really individual to a certain wedding that you've not maybe seen again, that was just super unique.
Man, I'm gonna have to rack my brain on that one. Nothing
Yeah.
has come to mind that is like super stand out as unique.
Yeah. Have you seen the? I did this at mine just I had never seen it. Have you seen the 360 photo booths?
Yes, 360 photo booths are pretty rad.
Yeah, I've seen a few of those nowadays, and I'm like, oh, those are pretty cool.
They're
But yeah,
it wasn't for a wedding that I did, but I was helping out another friend. You know, part of the community is we help each other out, and
sure.
another wedding planner was down an assistant, and I came to help out. And they have one of those live painters at the event, and
Oh,
so
that's cool.
they have like she got there really early and she basically painted the ceremony space and painted all the trees and the chairs and the background and everything like that. And then she records as the bride and groom come down, and then she records the entire time they're up at the altar. And then she takes a lot of photos and she basically paints them in during ceremony. Then people go to
Hmm.
cocktail hour. She moves into the reception, does final touches. And then once her painting is done, she does the reveal for the couple that's, walking in for
That's
grand entrance.
awesome.
Maybe after first dance, they come over and do a reveal.
Sure.
It was amazing.
I've never
Absolutely.
seen that. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, you should look that up. Do Live Painter on Instagram or Wedding Painter. There's a bunch of people that do it now. I mean, I'm sure it's a bit costly, but super
Sure.
cool, especially if you're into art like that and you would hang. It's a big canvas. I want to say
Yeah.
like by 36. And, you can, I think that she asked the couple like which pose they would pick in her stills, and they picked one where they were like their first kiss. And it was great. It was really beautiful. And I think that that was something that they'll keep for the rest of their lives.
Well, I'd call that pretty unique. I think that's
Pretty
good.
unique. Yeah, I mean that
Well,
that one definitely. I'm sure there's others that will come to mind,
sure.
and after we get off this call, I'm going to think of things. But that is the most
You're gonna
recent.
text me and be like, "Oh, this is what happened." Okay, I
This,
missed it.
but
Um,
that came to mind, and that's definitely a good one.
well, what about this question then? Because we're coming close to the end, but this is always my favorite one, and I feel like people usually have more of these. Is what's the most like cringiest thing you've ever seen, or something that went wrong, or if you can't think of something specific, a piece of advice of like, don't do this because it's gonna be cringy. It doesn't work. You know?
Well, I something that went wrong
Sure.
that I can think of that's maybe more appropriate for this conversation. But
Sure.
since COVID, what I've personally noticed is that clothes are not being made the same. There's not as much quality control. There is a lot of rips, a lot of tears, a lot
Hmm.
of malfunctions. And I know how to sew. I know, like, I can hand stitch. Thank God.
Nice.
I had recently where we had cocktail hour and we were moving inside, and for whatever reason the father of the bride reached down to pick something up and slit his pants
Oh,
from his crotch all the way to, like, I
what
mean, we're talking 24 inches of, and the bride sees it and she's like, holy, like, we're going in and he's giving a welcome toast, right? So we're going in, we're
yeah.
doing this dance, he's doing a welcome toast. So she was like, Courtney, like, hi. I'm like, walked over, I'm like, hi. And she's like, can you help my dad? And he shows me his leg, and I'm like, oh, yes, come with me. Well, I can't exactly tell him to take his pants off. I
Sure.
literally have 15 minutes. I've already started bringing people in. I have 15 minutes to sew his pants and be ready to go for grand entrance and for his welcome toast. So I'm like, okay, just come over here. I get my thread out, and I literally had to be on my knees stitching from his knee all the way up to his crotch. I'm like, we're getting really friendly here. Like, Courtney, by the way, nice to meet you again. Like,
My
he's like, so
God.
stitched it up pretty good. I did a pretty good job because usually you sew on the inside. I don't know how much
Sure.
you're sewing, but I had to sew on the outside. So I got it all stitched up, and he was like, oh my gosh. And like, my kind of like trademark name is Courtney the coordinator. And so he's like,
Yeah.
Courtney the coordinator saved the day. So he's going and showing everybody, showing his pants. Courtney the coordinator sewed my pants. Look, Courtney the coordinator sewed my pants. I'm like, this guy will remember me for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So those are just things that, you, again, hiring a professional. Not to say that sewing is a professional trade, but I
Yeah.
definitely do a lot of sewing because I'm a wedding planner.
It's a good skill to have. I actually know how to sew. I used to do theater and I had to work in the costume shop. I don't know if I could have sewed this guy's pants in 15 minutes, but and you probably, you had the sewing kit all there? Like it's in
Just
your go bag?
to, like, actually thread the needle and get all ready. And then I'm
Right.
on my knees and I'm walking my girls. I'm like, okay, I'm like, this girl, I need you to get all of the wedding party lined up in the hallway. And then this girl, I need you to just tell catering I'm on time, but I'm bringing the father of the bride out. And then I need you to go and talk to the bride and like let her know that I'm sewing his pants and I'll be right there, all on walkie talkies. Like, you're pretty good at this. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Working on the fly. But also, my face never changes. Something could be on
Right.
fire and I'm just going to be like, okay, let's get it handled.
Yep.
That's something that I've learned over the years, is to never
Yeah.
show that anything is bad or good or ugly, or you just keep going, and everybody's
Yeah.
calm because you're calm.
And because of that, I feel like there's got to be a lot of times that something went wrong at a wedding and the bride or groom never even knew about it. Like they would never know. Maybe they found out later. Maybe they never found out. Or some, it's like they just don't know.
There's some things I will take to my grave that I will never tell my people that it happened. And there's been things that we've shared that they heard through the grapevine something and they're like, thanks for handling that. We appreciate it. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's what I'm here for.
That's why you get a planner, because if you don't, father of the bride could just be coming out with his pants ripped up.
I mean, they probably would have safety pinned it and it would have been okay, but I think it would have been really obvious,
Oh,
it's
man.
just not an appropriate thing. So
I would have just been laughing. So I wouldn't have even been upset if I was like that groom. I would just be trying not to laugh.
Just trying not to. Well, and the funny thing is when I got the gallery of photos back, there's a picture of me, back of me, on my knees, next to the father of the bride. So I'm like, this is so inappropriate, but hilarious at the same time.
Funny.
It definitely looked like I'm sewing, like my hands coming up like photographer.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take a photo of me doing that to document Courtney the coordinator saving the dad's pants. I don't know.
It's part of the day. I mean, it's part of the story. It's something you'll look back on and be like, that was very. Hopefully, the stories you look back on are like, maybe something went wrong, but it's like, oh, that made it funnier and made it fine. Like, it was just a good memory, but hopefully nothing disastrous, because that's never.
I haven't had anything crazy disastrous, and I will thank my lucky stars and knock on wood for that.
Yeah, we don't want that. Okay, well, that's basically our time. So before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to mention? Anything else you want to say? We'll link to all your stuff on our social so people know where to find you, how to get in touch with you. But is there anything else you want to mention? Any other last minute pieces of advice or anything?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that, knowledge is power. And so, do your homework, do your research, ask for advice, ask for help when you need it. And, we have a great community out here in Southern California. So lean on your vendors as much as is needed. And I hope that everybody has an amazing wedding, because they deserve it.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you for doing this, Courtney. And we'll talk soon. I'm sure I'll see you in one of the events pretty soon. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Eventful Endeavors, Secrets to Crafting the Perfect Celebration. We hope to have left you with some actionable ideas for your own event. If you like the show, please subscribe and definitely leave us a review. We read every comment. So until next time, happy planning and see you soon on Eventful Endeavors.